I think what a lot of people don't realize is, hey, you can just every year you're in school, you can keep applying for scholarships until up to your obviously to your last year. I mean, so that's what I was doing. I just every scholarship I applied for, I just went for it. So it all helped. Every little bit helped. So that's kind of how I got through it.
Welcome to the Teacher Money Show, the podcast dedicated to helping teachers navigate your unique financial challenges and unlock your financial superpowers. I'm your host, John Morgan, a full-time educator and personal financial coach and speaker. And I'm here to help every teacher, whether you are a seasoned teacher looking for fresh insights or a new educator navigating your first paycheck, to have a richer wallet, classroom, and life.
Remember, my next webinar, A Teacher's Financial PEMDAS for Guaranteed Success, is on December 9th at 7 p.m. Central Time. If you'd like to sign up, go to teachermoneyshow.com/webinar. I look forward to seeing you there.
I'm super excited to have my friend Jason Brown on the show today. Jason is the author of Margin Matters, How to Live on a Simple Budget and Crush Debt Forever. More importantly, though, he's the author of It Is Possible, How I Earned 2 Debt-Free Degrees and How You Can Too. So today we're going to be talking all about, the student loan debt crisis and strategies and tips and hope for individuals who desire a higher education without debt. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey, Sean, so great to see you again. I really appreciate you having me on. And like I always say, if I can just say one thing to help somebody, it's all worth it, man. I'm just here to help any way that I can, man. Thank you so much for having me.
That's what we're all here for, is just helping people out, right? And
Absolutely.
specifically, we need help with student loans. Student loans are, you've called them the biggest financial trap of our generation. So how bad is it? Why are we concerned about the student loan debt crisis?
It's, I didn't really think, well, before I wrote the book, I didn't really think it was that bad. Okay. So I was like, well, it's how many people is it really affecting, So I was kind of like wishy-washy on it, but then I started really digging into the research and I was like, wow, this is really worse than I ever thought. I mean, this is setting people, this is really uh, like straddling people for life. A lot of times you're hearing stories now about people getting their like social security, like, garnishing their wages and social security, like parts of that taken away because they haven't paid their student loans. I mean, it's that bad. So Sean, I know you know a lot of these statistics, but I just kind of refreshed all my statistics, and they're even worse than when I wrote the book a few years ago. So, I'm just going to go through a couple of these. So the cost of college has skyrocketed more than 2,500% since 1970. So let that sink in. It's outpaced everything in our society. Every single thing that we hear about in the news, oh, groceries are going up, gas is going up, all my bills are going up. You're talking like 5, 10, 15, 20%. The cost of college, 2,500% since 1970. A 4-year public university cost approximately 2,580% more in 2020 compared to 1970. So that's over about 50 years? Over a 50-year period you're talking about. So the average cost of an in-state tuition fees was $394 in 1970. And the average in 2020 was $10,560. So you could see that. So when we talk about debt, debt categories in our country, right? So obviously mortgages is going to be by far the highest. Like mortgage debt is the highest, 18.4 trillion. Number 2 might surprise people. The number 2 highest debt in our country is student loan debt. It's at 1.8 trillion. Now, I will say auto loan debt is probably going to surpass student loans very soon just because the cost of cars is going up just crazy. So cost of cars, auto loans is 1.66 trillion. And then we have credit cards is 1.21 trillion. So those are all kind of, those three are close together. But the number 2 biggest debt in our country is student loan debt. It affects 42.5 million Americans. Only 38%. Now, here's where it starts getting even worse. You think that's bad? Here's where it starts getting worse. Only 38% of Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Sean.
I just want to point out that, like, yes, car loans are going to surpass student loans, but everybody owns a car, and
Right.
not everybody has student loans. So that just like highlights
That's true.
how big of an issue this is for the people that have it.
That's a very good point, and that's a really good way to put it in perspective. Only 38% of borrowers are current on their student loan repayments. That's not a good sign. Only and nearly so about 70% of college students take out loans. So the overwhelming majority are taking out loans. 40% of college attendees drop out before they even get this is where the problems get really, really bad with student loan debt is you're talking about people start college, they start taking out loans, and 40% of them don't even get a degree. So now they're out there with, the debt and without the degree. And here's another interesting statistic. 40% of high school graduates don't even go to college. So what are they doing? Um, and then, so the concern is that, people are spending the majority of their life paying back these loans. And a lot of them don't even have a degree or nothing to even, show for it. Now, I will say on a side note, uh, the pandemic pause, remember this, Sean, where I think it was almost for 5 years that they didn't have to pay back the loans, the government loans we're talking about. Like Trump started it in his first campaign when the pandemic hit. I was in 2020, I think. They put the payments into pause. And then, of course, Biden kept it for his entire 4 year. And then Trump, when he came back into office, he eventually, I think he just recently turned it off. So this is what's causing everyone to go into not deferment, default. People aren't paying back the loans because for 5 years they didn't have to, and now all of a sudden, hey, you got to pay this loan back, and then people, it's not part of your budget. You're paying $300 a month or whatever, and then now all of a sudden, I got to pay it back, and it's like, well, shoot, man, that's going to be difficult. So that's just a sidebar note that's a big reason why they're having so many problems right now. So it's a big the answer to your question. It's a massive issue, and it's not getting better. It's getting worse. And you think about, so when I wrote the book, it was at 1.7 trillion. Okay. Now remember all the things that Biden did to forgive. They forgave a lot of different categories of student loan debt. Remember, there was a lot of big fights with the Supreme Court stuff, but Biden was able to forgive a lot of different, certain groups, right? Got their student loans forgiven, and that didn't really lower it's still 1.8 trillion. It's gone up. So I don't really know what happened there. So it's a very interesting thing to follow.
Man, the fact that we're talking about trillions of dollars is what's crazy. Because I mean, 42 million, or 1.8 trillion divided by 42 million. I don't have that number off the top of my head. That's not a small number, right? It is a massive amount of money that people are in debt. And then you're saying like there's not a huge benefit, a huge return from it. Specifically for teachers thinking about this, right? You know, getting into student loan debt to get your original degree is, we have like public service loan forgiveness, and there's some options there. But then we often have to go back to school to get a master's degree,
Mhm.
and getting a master's degree is of course more expensive, and you're more likely to get a loan because are needing to go back to school and kind of like do this like part-time stuff, and there's a lot of things going on there. People will just get a loan so they can get it over with, instead of like trying to like work part-time and school part-time, and there's things like that. And then in the end you get like a $4,000 a year raise or a $6,000 a year raise, and it's like, well, was that worth it, right? That's
Mhm.
the types of things that I feel like a lot of people, and not just teachers, are getting these degrees, and then the question is, was that worth it? Did it even
Right.
uh, make a difference in your financial life? And especially for those people that are going to college and then not getting a degree, the answer is definitely no. No, it wasn't. All right,
Correct.
so that's
That's
the type
so
of thing
true.
that we're,
Those are
struggling.
great points. Great points, Sean.
So we have these tuition costs that are just going absolutely bonkers. Like I was just doing the quick math in my head. We're talking about 40% year over year inflation, like every single year, 40% for the 50-year period you're talking about, roughly. Like that's a massive amount of inflation, because we're like, we're talking about 2% is like the amount that the Fed's aiming at. So that's a way bigger amount of yearly inflation in tuition. But you know, with the tuition's costs going up, that doesn't necessarily mean that your costs have to go up. There's a game to be played there, right? So what part of like understanding the college system, how does that play into preparing ourselves to go to college?
Well, that's a good question, Sean. And so what I always tell people is a lot of people are focused on what you said, the tuition. Oh, the tuition, cost us, room and or tuition and books is so expensive. But really, what's more expensive is the living expenses. So if you're going to go off to school and live, in a dorm or an apartment or what have you, the cost of living far outpaces tuition and books, because you got to pay for transportation, you got to pay for rent, you got to pay for food, you got to pay for clothing, entertainment. People tend to not see that part of the expense, that far outweighs. So that's first thing you got to kind of take into consideration. Hey, am I going to be able to go to a school that's in my hometown that I can commute to from where I live? The first thing I tell people is if you can stay in state and go to a public school, you will save tens of thousands of dollars. Just that one decision alone. Stay in state, go to a public school. You're saving tens of thousands. That's the number one thing people tell me when I, talk to them about my book and stuff. They say, Jason, man, if I would have just stayed home and went to a local school, a local public school, I would have had half the student loan debt that I have right now. So that's one thing that I tell people. And it's just really like, like it's an education and awareness thing. Just you have to be able to seek wise counsel, talk to your parents, talk to if you have a guidance counselor at your high school. I always tell people about career coaches. Hey, get with a career coach. Even if you don't have to be like 40 years old and like, hey, I'm changing careers, and no, like you can go talk to a career coach when you're in high school and say, hey, I'm interested in graphic design. And, is this a viable career? I have no idea. Like, if I'm going to go to college and take out $80,000 of student loan to learn how to be a graphic designer, like, what are the salaries like for a graphic designer? Like, is it $30,000 a year? Can I make $80,000 a year? I have no idea. Those are the things that a career coach can help you with. Because most 18 to 24-year-olds, they're not going to have all that knowledge. I mean, yeah, you can research it on your own, and Google and stuff will help you, give you some parameters, but those are the kind of things that you kind of need to do your due diligence, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If you can do your due diligence, you can make much better decisions.
Yeah, and I love the point that you made earlier in what you were just saying about like the costs of tuition. Yes, those have gone up, but like most of the student loan debt is probably being spent on just living, right? Because you don't have to spend the student loans on tuition. You get tuition plus room and board and life, and some people do lifestyle in that, and they just spend while they're in college, and then they at the end and go, oh crap, like I spent all this money that I didn't actually have. And for the teacher perspective, most of us are looking to go back to school and
Hmm.
to get a higher degree, so that way we can get a raise. So keeping in mind that your current living expenses should be
Hmm.
covered by your current salary, and then if you need student loans, you would use it only for tuition. But of course, then if you're looking at tuition, you can look at grants and scholarships and things like that to knock those out. So that way you can have minimal or no student loans when you end the master's degree program that you're working on. Is that a framework to look at it, or am I being too okay with getting a loan to get a master's degree?
I think the way you just said it, you articulated that very, very well. And it takes discipline to be able to do it that way. It takes budgeting. It takes being mindful with your money and all those things, and careful planning. Plan this stuff out. Like I tell, like when I went back to school to get my master's, Sean, I took a year. I literally just thought about it for a year because I had two barriers, Sean. You have two barriers. I had obviously the financial barrier, which is what we're talking about, the cost. There's the financial barrier, but also there's the time barrier. So luckily for me, I was blessed to have the financial barrier removed because I worked at the university that I went to school at, so they had the tuition waiver. So I'm like, okay, that's great. I don't have to pay for it, but I don't even know if I have the time to do it. So I've got to figure this out. Like, when can I do this? So I took a year. All these things we're talking about, is it worth it? I took a year to think about all these things. Is it worth it? Is it going to help me? Is it going to advance my career? Or is it going to be a waste of time? Like, I never think higher education or higher learning is a waste of time. So I'll say that first. I mean, you there's nothing wrong with learning more skills, learning more knowledge, just stuff like that. But yeah, you want ROI, you want return on investment. You don't want to feel like, hey, I wasted my time. Like I just wasted 3 years in that grad program, and I'm in the same place. But yeah, you want to do, that's what we're talking about, doing your due diligence. And yeah, if you want to plan it out to where, you know, apply for the scholarships and grants and every opportunity you can to help, defray some of that cost. That's what, that's the way to go for sure.
Yeah, I love how you're talking about planning and thinking about it in advance because this is something that I've seen happen too often. Like someone says, "Oh, I'm going to get a master's degree. You should get one too because it's so great." And then like people just go like, "Yeah, let's do it." And like it's almost like an impulse to go get a master's degree, or like, "Oh, I'm just going to go to this school because I love this school," right? And there's no like, wait a minute. Right next to that school is a different school that's like half the cost that I could go to. Or, there's none of this like, am I going to actually get the return on investment that I need for this to make sense? And I think that's the thing that we really need to consider as teachers is that return on investment piece. And I believe that it is a good return on investment long term as a teacher, because with a master's degree, you do get a higher salary. Like across the
Mhm.
board, I'm not sure if there's any state where that just doesn't happen. Some states it's more than others. For example, in Texas, it was like you get $500 a year. It's like whoop de doo, right? So like, it depends on where you are. But then that would also temper what you do. Like, am I going to get a master's degree just to get that, or maybe I'd move somewhere else where it'll be a higher return on investment. But then the thing to consider for teachers is your pension is based on your highest salary. So having that master's degree for when you're at that highest salary bracket at the end is essential to having a higher retirement benefit. So
Mhm.
just all around, there are great reasons uh, to get that master's degree for the return on investment piece. But I must say I have to disagree with you on something.
Okay.
There is some higher education that is an absolute waste of time. And
That sounds like a whole nother show.
as a teacher, I'm watching my wife go through or not master's, a bachelor's degree right now because she didn't finish, so she's doing it right now. And some of the things that they are asking her to do, I'm like, this is not teaching anybody anything. It's just checking a box. Like you're just jumping through hoops to get a piece of paper, and I that bothers me because I want good teaching, good pedagogy, good learning, and I just see
I'm with you. I hear you. I hear
a
you. I
waste
hear
of
you. It's like grunt work or busy work. Like, when you're in the corporate, for me, like, I have a corporate job. So it's just like they'll tell me to do something. And I'm like, can't we have an intern do that? Like, you're asking me to do this? Like, really? Okay. It's just busy work, right? Just here's something to occupy your time, right? No, I get that. I get that. That is frustrating. Well, like I will say, there are elements, we talk about college. Some people call college a scam. There are elements. First of all, the loan industry is a scam, but the biggest element of college, and this might line up what you're talking about, Sean, is this whole like that I think is a scam. Is this whole like you get to college, hey, for me, hey, I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. That was my first passion. I want to do journalism, broadcasting, learn how to write, learn how to, TV, newspaper, all that stuff, media. And then the first 2 years, you have to go through these core classes that these required core classes that you have absolutely no interest or passion about. Like I'm taking, biology and statistics and all these like math classes and all these just waste classes, right? That I have no interest in. And and let me tell you something, Sean. My first this is the example or whatever you want to call it, the red flag. So my first 2 years of college, I was on academic probation like 2 or 3 times, and I was almost expelled because I was on. I mean, I had like a 1.9 GPA. Why? Because I was taking all these classes that I hated and I didn't even want any part of it. But guess what happened, Sean? When I got into my major, when I got into my media communications major, Dean's List every semester, Dean's List, 3.5, 3.8, 3.9. That's your, your white paper, whatever you want to call it, your example right there. It's like, hey, guess what? I got into, you actually let me take classes that I wanted to take, that I was interested in, that I wanted to do for a career. And I got, A's and B's, Dean's List, honor roll, all that stuff. And so that's the element of college. I think that's kind of what you're talking about a little bit with your wife's example, is like taking these classes that are just like throwaway classes. Like, why? Like, yeah, if someone's, there's plenty of undergrads that haven't declared a major yet and they're not sure what they want to do. I get it. Okay, hey, maybe they can explore taking all these different classes, and maybe hey, I'm really interested in U.S. history, or hey, I'm really interested in engineering or whatever. I took this intro class to design, art and design. Hey, I want to pursue that. That's perfect for those type of people. But if you already know what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, what you want to pursue, why would you like have somebody like myself waste 2 years and just throw money away? So that's kind of probably my biggest beef with the college, the way it's set up. So yeah, that's my
And
that's my that's my rant for the day right there.
we're getting a little off here, but I do want to continue on this vein because so the reason why we have that is it's a holdover from like a liberal arts education, which I am 100% in belief that a liberal arts education is a worthwhile endeavor for itself, but it takes like a level of skill to learn everything well that is just not being perpetuated in colleges, right? You have these professors who are there for research who get told you have to go teach this class. They stand up, they lecture at you with a PowerPoint. You're bored out of your mind. You learn nothing really great about it. And then you just like take a test with a multiple choice thing. You're not getting a liberal arts education anymore. You're just checking a box, right? Instead of
Mhm.
getting to dive deep into like great ideas and all those things and be a great thinker and stuff like that. And that's what the original purpose of all those courses was. And we've just gone away from that. I was talking to a university professor who left because he liked teaching. So I like to teach more than I like research. So he left and went, he's teaching in high school now because he was told if you are a great researcher, you will do well. If you are a poor teacher, you'll be fine. Like they don't care about good teaching at universities. They want the
Right.
research.
Right.
And that's what really bothers me is that like and if you go to these like non-research schools, they're actually going to have better teachers because that's what they're there for. So I firmly believe that we've got a scam thing going on in a lot of these places because they're just there to do their research because that's where their money is being made, which surprises
Hmm.
me because tuition is so high. But like that's what they're trying to really accomplish, and they're just teaching because they have to. Uh, so it's a very weird dynamic for what we have going on in colleges. And we could
So
probably
true.
rant about this a bit
So
longer, but
true.
I want to move us on to how we can
Yeah.
save money on
Sure,
our
man.
college.
For sure.
So how did you? What are some of the things that you did to not get any debt with two degrees? Everybody, okay, you
That's
got two
true.
degrees, debt free. What did you do?
All right, let me go through them because they're both completely different, unique stories. So, uh, undergrad. So I was in undergrad in the mid to late '90s. So you can figure out how old I am. Now this was back. There was no like student loan debt crisis in the news, so that wasn't really on my radar. My radar was just, hey, my parents can't afford to pay for me to go to school. I have to work. Like this is on me. Like, I don't want debt, and I'm just gonna figure out how to pay for myself. So here's what I did. So luckily, I went to a public, in-state public university. Thankfully, it was 7 miles from my parents' house. They let me live at home. Those were two big things that allowed me to save a ton of money. So I worked three part-time jobs while I was in school. Two. This was super convenient. I got two on-campus jobs, super convenient. You're already on campus, so I got two on-campus jobs. One with the student newspaper, and then one with the athletic department. And then I worked. There was actually a mall across the street, and I had a retail job in the mall. So super convenient. All the jobs were close. So I was working, making money. And then I did earn some scholarships along the way. So I actually, at one point, I did get a job at Chick-fil-A, and Chick-fil-A has a tremendous scholarship program. Now, back in, my time in the mid to late 90s, it was their scholarship program was just starting out. So I had to be there for 2 years and work 2,000 hours, and I earned a $1,000 scholarship. You can earn way, way more now through Chick-fil-A. Their scholarship program is so much better now. So I got $1,000 Chick-fil-A scholarship. And then let's see that now. Let's see. I attended part time. Talked about that. I bought used books. That saved a lot of money. Now here's where it got interesting. I know, Sean, you want to ask me about this. I was the first non-athlete to earn an athletic scholarship at my university. So how in the world did that happen? So what happened was, at the time we were a very small school. Kennesaw State is the school we're talking about. Kennesaw State University. It's in Kennesaw, Georgia, just north of Atlanta, just to give you a point of reference. And it's a massive university now. But when I was there, it was a very small commuter school, and it was like a NAIA, and then it was Division II in athletics, and we had like 8 sports, very small. So we had no athletic budget. But I wanted to get into sports, so I started helping out. I started volunteering. I started working in the athletic department, doing internships and stuff. And that was just my passion. Now, of course, the athletic director, he had no money to pay me, but I didn't really care. I was like, hey, this is invaluable experience. I'm getting to travel with the teams. It's so much fun. I'm a poor college student. Who cares? So they eventually, so my junior year, this is the athletic director just kind of doing some creative budgeting, I think is what happened. So my junior year, I actually, they put me on a book scholarship. So I got an athletic book scholarship. So I had all my books paid for my junior year. So that was super, super helpful. We all know how expensive books are. And then my senior year, when I came back from my senior year, this was a shot. This wasn't anything that they told me. It wasn't like, hey, Jason, if you work really hard, we'll give you a scholarship. It wasn't anything like that. It was just like, hey, uh, it was just like a total blind. It's like, hey, we're giving you a scholarship. What are you talking about? So my senior year, they put me on a full athletic scholarship. So I got, everything like books, tuition. My whole senior year was paid for. And then when I reflected back on it, like when I was writing these stories in the book, I was like, man, I hope I didn't take I hope I didn't take an athletic scholarship away from an athlete, but I'm quite certain I didn't. That was just that was creative budgeting by their athletic director. But let me tell you, that was just, to have one full year paid for that was life changing for me, man. Like trying to scrape together all these part-time jobs. So that's kind of the undergrad story. I pieced it together a lot of different ways. So grad school, 15 years later, so you got to fast forward 15 years. Now I'm working for Kennesaw State as a full-time employee in their marketing, doing some marketing communications work. So I'm working for the school, and then I become friends with the guy that works in the grad admissions office. He says, Jason, you're a professional writer, editor, that's your thing. He's like, you should go. We have a master's in professional writing. You should do this. And I was like, I didn't even know we offered that. He says, yeah. He says, you could use the TAP program, the tuition assistance program. He says, because you're an employee here, the school pays for it. He says, the only thing you'll have to pay for is your own books. I said, really? Oh, wow, that's interesting. So, like I said a few minutes ago, I took a year to think about this. I was like, well, I'm going to have it paid for, but when in the world have I got to do this? Like, how am I going to have the time to do it? Me and my wife were expecting our first kid. So there was a lot going on in our lives at the time. So at the end of the day, I was like, I'll have more regret not at least trying to do it than, thinking back, man, I really should have done that. What could it have possibly led to? So I went to I ended up getting into the grad school as a professional master of art in professional writing. And so I got the TAP program, so that paid for the tuition. But I still had to pay for books. So guess what I did? I started applying for scholarships, a lot of small scholarships. Okay, so I applied for a couple, 2 or 3 or 4. I got rejected a couple times, and I just reapplied. They were annual ones, right? So I remember the first year I was in grad school, I didn't get them, and then I applied for them again. I just kept trying, and so I ended up getting two scholarships. I got a $500 and a $1,000 scholarship for the books. And we'll come back to that story in a minute, because I know you were going to ask me about that. So then before I graduated, I actually was offered another job in the private corporate sector. That's the job I have now as a professional technical writer and editor. So I actually left Kennesaw State, I was like, well, I don't know. I'm leaving I'm walking away from free tuition here. So me and my wife had already budgeted out. I only had like 2 semesters left. So me and my wife had already budgeted out like, okay, well, we can just pay for the rest of it out of pocket. And we figured out how much it was going to be. And, we were trying to work that out with the budget. And then, thankfully enough, I get into the HR orientation and they start going over all the benefits that the company offers. And then all of a sudden, bing, 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 the company offers tuition reimbursement program. I was like, whoa, 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 what did you say? Tuition reimbursement. How does that work? Let me go ahead my first day on the job. Let me go ahead and apply for that. So sure enough, my current employer paid for my last 2 semesters of school. So I got a totally 100% free master's degree. And not only was it free, or I didn't pay for it. I actually earned money. And Sean, I know you asked me, how in the world did you make money going to grad school? So what happened was those 2 scholarships that I applied for, those were cash scholarships. Okay, so when I won those scholarships, it was just one of them. They literally, it was like they literally handed me a check. Here's a check for $1,000. I could have done whatever. I could have gone to the casinos with that. I could have done whatever I wanted with that. But of course I used it, for school. And then the other one was for $500. So I got $1,500, and I bought all used books off Amazon. But I was also real creative too in grad school. It was a small program. We all knew each other. There's about 100 students in there. So what I would do was we would all borrow each other's books. So like Sean would say, me and you in a group. So Sean, you just took these classes last semester that I'm taking this semester. Can you save all your books for me and we'll just swap out? And then you would just say, hey, you can just borrow my books. And you give me the books you have for this class. There was a lot of like that, like borrowing of each other's books. That saved a ton of money. But nowadays you can rent books. Now I was in grad school. I graduated in 2018. So a little bit of, at that time you could buy used books a little bit cheaper than you could rent books for. I think now you can probably rent books for a little bit cheaper, because for my strategy was I'm going to buy the used book. Let's say I bought a used book for $50 and then try to put it on eBay and try to sell it back. My goal is to get half back. So if I bought a book for $50, I try to sell it for 25. So I try to get 50% back. So that's kind of what my strategy was with the books. I never did end up renting any because the rental price at the time was the same price to buy it. So I was like, I'll just buy it and then sell it back. And then whatever I get back, it's kind of a bonus. So I guess at the end of the day, I certainly did. The whole point of the story is I certainly didn't spend $1,500 on books. I probably pocketed maybe about $1,000 of that. So I made a little bit of money off the scholarships. So, but the thing is like, I think what a lot of people don't realize is, hey, you can just every year you're in school, you can keep applying for scholarships up to obviously to your last year. I mean, so that's what I was doing. I just every scholarship I applied for, I just went for it, so it all helped. Every little bit helped. So that's kind of how I got through it.
Yeah, so there's a few different things I want to point out. One is tuition reimbursement or tuition assistance.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of school districts actually have something like this. Uh,
Okay.
so I mean, not a ton, not all of them, but like a lot of them do. So it's one of those benefits that if you sneeze in the middle of the presentation when you're first getting onboarded, you might miss it because they just like
Mm-hmm.
click through it real quick. But ask if you're like, I wonder if they have this. Just ask HR. You might be able to get some sort of tuition, and they usually have a limited amount. So ask early, ask often to get that kind of a reimbursement. And then scholarships, the amount of scholarship money that doesn't get claimed every single year is just insane. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but there's a large amount. And I feel like it's just because people are like, oh, I'll never get that one. So they just don't apply. I applied for like a bank was saying like, write an essay, it's 1 page and, just, on this topic and send it in. I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? I got time. I'll write, an essay from 1 page. I got $2,000 from writing a
Yep.
1 page essay
Yep. Yep.
for this bank, right? That was in my undergrad. So like just apply for scholarships like crazy. Like the return on investment on scholarships is usually very high. Even if you spend like 20 hours applying for scholarships to get a $2,000 scholarship, that's $100 an
Mm-hmm.
hour. How many of us are
Yeah.
making $100 an hour?
Yeah.
Not
That's a good
very
point.
many teachers are making that much per hour. So It's a huge, you know, investment of time with a even bigger return on investment to go for the scholarships. The books thing, there are actually services now as well that like will buy books from you. Like they'll
Okay.
you if you like, buy the book and then you turn around and sell it, they'll buy the book from you, not for as much, but like you don't have to try and find the person on eBay or
Oh,
wherever.
that's good.
You
That's
can just be
good.
like, hey, I I'd like to sell this book to you, and it might be local markets or whatever, but there are services that are like, hey, we're going to be able to resell these, so we'll buy it from you, at like 15% or 20% of cost, and then they'll try and sell it to somebody else at 50% or whatever. But still, like it's a way to sell your books and get
Mhm.
a good return on those. So just look into that, see if your area has those kind of book exchanges, and if not,
Sure.
maybe you should start one and
That's
get some of that money on top of it. I had a
that's
friend who
true.
actually helped run a local one when I was uh, in undergrad. So like it's a good opportunity, sure.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, to answer your question about unclaimed scholarships. So Dave Ramsey always says, he says over $100 million a year of unclaimed scholarship money. Now, I've heard other scholarship experts say that's it's way higher than that. So you're talking at least $100 million a year of money of unclaimed scholarships goes, unused. So there's so much money out there that people don't realize. And the other thing I'll say is kind of along your point about the scholarship. I always tell people, hey, go for the low hanging fruit. Everyone wants to go for, hey, I'm gonna apply for the $50,000 scholarship. Guess what? So is 50 million other people. But what about all these like the ones we got, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000? There might only be, 5 or 10 people. I'm gonna tell you for certain, Sean, that some of these scholarships I got, I was probably the only one that applied for it. I
Hmm.
think that I honestly, because either A, people didn't even know about it, or B, like they were like, well, I'm not gonna waste my time to apply for a $500 scholarship. Like, what is that really gonna do? That's not really gonna help me. Let me go for the $20,000 one. That's more of a boost for me to get. But yeah, but you're right. Like I remember one of them was just like write a 250-word essay on how this scholarship money it is going to help you. Like literally, it's an open-ended question. How is this scholarship money going to help you? Like, pursue your goals and dreams or whatever. And it's just completely open-ended, 250 words. I mean, how long is that going to take you? 15 to 20, maybe 15 to 30 minutes? Like take your time, write a 250 word thing and like that's a great return on investment. If it's $500 or $1,000 for 30 minutes of your time. I mean, those were the kind of ones that I applied for, and I got two of them. So you're totally right about that.
Yeah, and something that I'm thinking about, because so my wife's in college right now, and we could use some scholarship money because I've got a young child, right? So this makes this whole thing even more expensive and difficult. But we're looking into scholarships, and I'm like, well, finding scholarships on these like massive scholarship websites are just terrible. Like these websites are awful. Like I'm like telling
Mm.
people like we live in Texas. And it's like if you're in Michigan, it's like you didn't filter out that I live in Texas. Like they're just awful. So I'm thinking like I'll have my wife use AI and like say, ask me the questions that you need to know about me to find scholarships that apply to me, and then do deep research to look for all the scholarships that I should apply for. Right. I think, just like going out there, like, all the local scholarships, all the small ones, like any scholarship that's posted online, if you do a deep research, they will take, 10, 20 minutes to just scan like the entire internet, and you'll have a ton of much more qualified scholarships that you can look at. That's my plan. I'll report back on how it goes. Um,
Okay.
but I'm just saying, like, be creative on how you find these scholarships and
Hmm.
apply for them, because they're going to make
Sure.
a huge difference. And then one more thing, I really we've kind of skipped over it, but
Yeah.
uh, work while you are going
Yes.
to school. Right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
that's so critical.
So
I
important.
my undergrad, I worked as many hours as they would legally allow me to, so they didn't have to pay me health insurance for my undergrad, right? And then I
Hmm.
would do some other work as well, so I had like two things going on. Um, so that way I would be able to pay for my stuff. But then I made sure that I worked really hard on my education, because I got a full ride scholarship for doing well on my education. So like you don't want to slough on that because most schools will give scholarships if you are in that top bracket GPA. So that's something else to look into. If you're going to be getting that, you can drop, maybe have or get a full scholarship for your tuition costs. So I figured that working really hard and doing really well in my classes was another full time job I should have. And then for my master's degree, I worked delivering ice from 3:30 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon, and then I worked on my master's degree in the afternoon, and I paid for my master's degree doing that. So the factor of work is so important because you're not going to have to pay the interest later. Yes, you are paying for the school as you go, but you aren't paying the interest on that, once you've gotten that raise, that higher pay. So that higher pay will actually make a difference in your life.
Okay, I got to ask you about the ice story, man. When did you sleep and when did you go to class?
So it was an online program that I was on. It's a
Okay.
Western Governors University, and they had they have this program where you pay for 6 months of tuition, and you can cram as many classes as you'd like into that 6 months. So I crammed my entire master's degree in 6 months,
Okay.
and uh, so I just went
Wow.
from like 3:30 until probably 10 o'clock at night. I was doing my my master's and my work, and then I just didn't sleep. Was really, I guess, the
Oh
question.
God.
I just didn't sleep as much as I probably should have. I was probably getting like maybe 6 hours of sleep a night, and then I take a nap on Sundays or something like that. But
I
yeah,
see.
it was a interesting time of my life. I wouldn't recommend it necessarily to anybody, but the fact that I was able to bust out my master's degree in 6 months and have it entirely paid for delivering ice was just way better than stretching it over 2 years and you know getting a bunch of student loans as I went and all that other kind of stuff.
That's a wild story, man. I'm glad it worked out for you, bud. That's a good story to share.
I said, like, I'm gonna try to do it in 6 months, and then I probably won't be able to. But they told me this is what you need to do to get it done in 6 months. So I just said I'm gonna try that, and I was able to maintain the pace that they told me to, and we made it. So it is a great way to pay for college, but it was rough. So uh, but what I always tell that story for is to point out, like, you don't have to go to the nice college to get your master's degree. Like the best college around, like for teachers, like the point isn't necessarily the education. Yes, the education matters, and I don't want to like say like education, you don't need it. Like who cares? But like your school is not going to look at a Harvard degree, master's degree, any differently than a local public school master's degree. You got a master's degree, we're going to pay you more. That's it.
Mhm.
There's no other factor in there. They're not considering how good your master's degree was or anything like that. So finding the cheapest option
Mhm.
that's not gonna make you feel like I'm an idiot for using this, but like find a cheap option that is a local college or an online college or something like that that's just going to allow you to get the master's degree, get the education without paying an arm and a leg is the way that I approach it.
What I say to stories like yours and mine as well is it's short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. That's the way I look
Mhm.
at it. Sh- Your story is the perfect example. It's short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. And when you look at it that way, like yeah, what you did, like you grinded it out for 6 months, and yeah, life probably sucked during that time, but you see kind of the bigger picture. You see like, hey, there's so much more potential for me in the future if I go through this now and just knock it out. And then when I reflect back on it, like we're doing now, like 5 years, 10 years, you're like, man, I'm really glad I did that.
Yeah, awesome. So I think it's time for us to kind of start wrapping this
Sure.
conversation up here. Um, my $1 million question for you is this. Because since we have teachers that are listening that are thinking about their master's degree, but they also probably have kids. who are preparing for college. So I just want to know what you think. Is
Okay.
college still worth it?
Yeah, that is the $1,000,000 question. So the first the cop out answer is it depends. Okay. But before we try to answer this, I want to throw a couple more. These are really important statistics that you need to consider if you're a parent of a high schooler. These are statistics that you need to consider before, like, hey, is college worth? This is part of the answer. 40% of we talked about a couple of these already. 40% of college uh, students that start college never finish. 40%. That's significant. 40% of college students never earn a degree. 40% of high school graduates never go to college. These are stories you don't hear in the media. What are these students doing? What are 40% of high school college graduates doing? Like, what are they going to work? Are they starting businesses? Are they going to trade school, tech school? What are they doing? Like, are they living at home till they're 40? Like, well, I want to hear these stories. Where are these stories? Okay, a couple more. 20 only 27% of college graduates work in a field that is related to their major. Yep, you know that one, Sean. You know that one. You're shaking your head. One more, real quick. And only 41% of recent college graduates work in jobs requiring a degree. Okay. So it means they went through college 4 6 years, got the $80,000 loan, and they got their first job out of college. But guess what? They didn't even need, there was no bachelor's degree requirement for it. So I don't know. So those are those are really big, I guess, data points that you want to consider before going to college. So I would say a couple of ways I would answer it. I was like, I think college is worth it if you can afford to pay for it, right? Either through your, working, paying cash, getting scholarships. If you can go to college without debt, yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it, you know. But if you can't afford to pay for it, you really have to get, like I said, get with a career coach. Like, hey, is this degree, what kind of salary range can I expect with this degree? And then you come back, hey, it's going to cost me $80,000 of student loan debt to get this degree. Do I really want to be paying that off for the next 40 years of my life? These are things that you need to consider. But one thing that I tell people, we always hear this term gap year. Oh, I took a gap year after high school. I took a gap year. But when we hear it, it's like, I took a gap year to go travel abroad and find myself. No, no, I tell people, hey, what about you? What about taking a gap year after high school and working 3 jobs? Like what you did with the ice company, Sean? What if you did, like, you took a 1 year gap year and just killed yourself and worked 3 jobs, saved up 30, 40, 50,000, and maybe hopefully your parents would let you live at home for 1 extra year, and you saved up all that money, and then you went to college and paid for it with cash, right? Would you rather kill yourself for 1 year, or would you rather kill yourself for 40 years paying back, hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loan debt? That's kind of how I look at it. But yes, I know it's a long-winded answer, but you have to, certain degrees that you certain fields, engineering, you want to be a doctor or a dentist or certain things, yes, you have to go to college for. But if there's certain things, if you want to be a graphic designer or if you want to be a writer, like, you can probably go to tech school or trade school or vocation school, whatever you want to call it. Like for me, if I had to do it all over again, here in Georgia, I'm in Atlanta area, we have the Georgia Film Academy. I would have got, like, I would have loved to have gone to Georgia Film Academy and learned to become a script writer. Like, so that would have probably been a path that I would have probably chosen. So there's so much. So Sean, listen here. I'm 50. I'm just going to tell you, I'm 50 years old, and I've been talking to high schoolers at my church, and I've been trying to tell them, like, look, you guys have no idea how much more opportunity you have now than when I was your age. Like, they're just, options were just so limited. Like if I wanted to be a sports writer, like, okay, there's the newspaper and that's it. Like now you have all this digital media stuff. You can podcast, YouTube, you can blog, have a website. There's so much more that you can do now. And a lot of this stuff you can learn on your own, right? You can go to YouTube, or there's free online classes. So I guess the long-winded answer is still, it depends. It really depends on what you want to do. Can you pay for it? I'm anti-debt, so I try to tell people, don't go into debt. Don't do it. So it really just depends. It's kind of an individual, case by case thing. So I know that might sound like a cop out answer, but I am still pro, higher education, higher learning. But there's ways to get higher education and higher learning without going the traditional college route. So I guess I'll leave it at that. That's the final answer.
All right. Yeah, I 100% agree. You have to consider the return on investment. You have to consider, if you can pay for it outright, then getting a degree that's not necessary might be worth it just because of the experience. But if you're going to get a degree that's not necessary and then have $80,000 of student loans, then probably not worth it, right? Especially if you end up working in a job that you don't even need a degree. Now, anecdotally, my wife was trying to get a job and just struggled. No one was hiring her. Um, for a long time. And we felt like, because most of the jobs just like, have a bachelor's degree and 1 year experience. It's like, well, how can I have both? Just
Right.
starting off. Like, so that's why we decided, to have her pursue a bachelor's degree. So that way, if something happened to me, she would at least have that piece of paper that says I went to college, and that would, maybe give her a leg up, which is probably a dumb reason to go to college, but it's why we're approaching that, just because we felt that kind of discrimination in applying for the jobs that she was hoping to get. So I do believe that, higher education is important. And then as teachers, like, obviously you need a teaching certificate to get, hired as a teacher. And for the most part, that requires having a degree, not necessarily a degree in teaching anymore because they're getting desperate, but a degree of some kind is generally required to uh, become a teacher. But that doesn't mean you need to go to, Columbia University and pay $50,000 a year in tuition to get a teaching degree. That's a terrible idea. When you can go
Right.
to, your local college and pay, five to $10,000 a year in tuition, end up with 1 year's worth of tuition, paid or less from Columbia, right? You're paying, maybe 30 or $40,000 worth of tuition instead of 50 a year, and then you still have a teaching certificate at the end, and you can teach anywhere with that. So it's just like, being mindful of the cost, especially when you're going to have a degree that doesn't have a higher end uh, payout at the end. It is huge. So I really like what you're bringing up there. And then, like, if you're looking at your kid and they're like, they don't know what to do, go explore what to do before you go pay to explore what to do. Is what I would
Right.
highly recommend. That's going to save you as the parent money, probably, because
Hmm.
usually parents end up feeling bad for the kids and, forking over some cash to help them out. So uh, give them a leg up by having them explore, not paying, 20, 30, $40,000 a year is what I would recommend for sure. Okay, so we're just gonna wrap this up here, but just want to ask you real quick: is there any other point you think we've missed about how to approach getting a degree uh, without paying for it?
I'll just say one thing, it's a big thing that we haven't really touched on. This is for like parents of like maybe high schoolers, or the dual enrollment program is huge. And I know it's different in each state. But the dual enrollment program, this is something I never heard of, like when I was in school, but apparently it allows high schoolers to start taking college classes. So here in Georgia, you can start doing this when you're in 11th grade. So in 11th and 12th grade, you can start taking high school classes. The state pays for all of this. Now, again, it's different in each state. So whatever state you're in, you got to research it on your own. But here in Georgia, like the state of Georgia will pay for high schoolers to go to like a local school, like a local public school. And guess what? That they're starting school, they're starting college when they go to college. A lot of these kids are starting college as a sophomore. So guess what? They just they erased a time and financial, right? So they erased the time, and they're ahead of all their peers by a year, and by however much, 20,000, whatever the cost of that 1 year is. And so that means when they graduate college in potentially 3 years, they've entered the workforce. They've got one more year of salary than all their peers, right? So this is a huge thing, and I can't wait to sign my kids up for it. But so that's one thing I do want to mention. I know we didn't touch on that, but wherever you are, research dual enrollment program for high schoolers. This can save you a tremendous amount of money on college expenses.
Yeah, my niece is actually graduating high school with a an associate's degree at the end of this year because of dual
Wow.
enrollment. So it's
That's amazing.
incredible.
Fantastic,
Opportunity.
fantastic.
All right. So last two questions I ask all my guests then. First of all, if someone has more questions about how you earned a debt-free degree, or maybe they're like, hey, I'm in this situation, obviously Jason's not like a debt-free degree advisor certified or whatever. But if someone has a question for Jason or want to contact you about your books, how can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I appreciate you asking that. The best way to find me is just go to my website. It's yourmarginmatters.com. And on my website, there's a link to all my books. I have a YouTube channel where I share all my information as well. So there's a link to my YouTube channel. And then there's a link you can email me. There's a link to contact me. And it has, I have blogs on there. There's a lot of resources on there as well. So you should find that hopefully helpful. Once again, yourmarginmatters.com. And you can find all my information there.
All right. Well, awesome, Jason. My last question then is, what is your number one tip for teachers to have a richer wallet, classroom, and life?
Oh, wow. That's such a deep question. I would just say, I know how it is. My wife actually has an education degree as well. And I know how it is. Teachers always need help, right? There's never enough funding. They're always, they need stuff for the classroom. So really honestly, my number one tip is don't be afraid to ask for help. Because here where I'm at, the teachers that they do fundraisers, they do donations, that everyone helps out with donating supplies to the classroom because there's not enough money in the school budget. So I would just say, don't be afraid to ask for help because people want to help. People love teachers and people want to help them. And we see the community that I'm in, the community really rallies around. Our community loves our teachers. I've got two boys that are in elementary school, and man, they do so much for the teachers. They bring them, whatever they need supplies, they help out. They bring them gifts for their birthdays and stuff. So honestly, just if you're a teacher, don't be afraid to ask for help because people love teachers and they want to help teachers. And we want to support our teachers because we know how invaluable teachers are to our community and our society. So, I don't know if that was the answer you're looking for, but that was kind of what was on my heart. So I wanted to share that.
No, that's great. And this goes right into one of the tips I always share, like how to save money as a teacher is if you need something for your classroom, ask somebody else, right?
Yeah, and there's no shame in that, honestly, because we know, like, everybody knows, like, all we hear about in the news, oh, budget cuts and schools and teachers aren't getting raises, like teachers are underpaid. We know that, like that's we know that. We know teachers should get paid more. We know how valuable teachers are, and we know that they need help. So yeah, like you're right, Sean. Like there's no shame. Don't be don't be afraid to ask for help because parents want to help, like they really do. And sometimes they're just like, hey, how can we help? We don't know how to help, so tell us how to help. So you say, hey, I need XYZ for my class. Oh, great, we'll help you out. So now we know what you need, so we're here to help. So yeah, that's so true, Sean.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason, for your heart sharing that and wanting to help out teachers. I know that that matters a lot to those that are listening. And thank you for sharing your path to getting two debt-free degrees. And we could have this conversation to hopefully inspire some people to realize that it's possible to have no debt at the end of getting a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, if you take some time, plan, and think about it. So thank you, Jason, for coming on the show. We really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. And like I said, I hope I said just one thing. If I just said one thing that helps somebody out, it just makes my day. So I appreciate seeing you again, Sean. Hope to see you down the road, my friend.
Wow. Wasn't that a great episode with Jason? I'm just going to give you my quick cliff notes. Number one, make sure that you think and plan ahead before you start your education journey. You don't want to just go in, half cocked, guns blazing. You just want to have a plan to try and reduce your cost of education as much as possible. Number two, work while you are getting education. Now, as teachers, we're going to work while we're getting our education, but you might want to consider doing something like over the summers, working full time, not in teaching, of course, to save up some money to then do part time master's degree during the school year. I know that the school year's tight, but it, my wife works full time and has a baby right now, and she's getting a part time degree, so it's possible for us to do that if we prioritize it. Number three, Scholarships. Scholarships are so huge. There's many scholarships, especially the small ones that people just aren't applying for. So you might as well apply for one and see if you get it. And then if you don't get it, try again the next year. Every little bit helps. And number four, make sure that there's a good return on investment. So if you're going to go to a college that's going to cost, $50,000, but you're only going to get a $1,000 or $5,000 or whatever a year raise, is that worth it? That's the thing to figure out, depending on how much student loan debt you have to get to do it. Is it worth it? So trying to do it without student loan debt, does that change the equation and so forth? Checking that ROI is the way to determine if the degree is worthwhile. Those are my main takeaways from this episode. Regardless of if you choose to get a master's degree or not, remember that as a teacher, you are already rich. Your wallet just needs to catch up.
If you would like help on your personal financial situation, go to teachermoneyshow.com/coaching and you'll be able to find different ways I can help you there. If you would like to participate in spreading this message of financial empowerment to teachers, I would encourage you to talk to your administrator or to your district level about going to SeanKMorgan.com to find more information there. And regardless of which one of those you need, please like and subscribe so that way we can spread the reach of this more. Leave a 5-star rating and review. That's going to help more teachers find this. And then turn around and tell a teacher friend. I really appreciate it.
The contents of this podcast are informational in nature and are not legal or tax advice, and neither I nor my guests are engaged in the provision of legal, tax, or any other advice. You should not act upon this information without first seeking appropriate advice from an accountant, financial planner, lawyer, or other professional.